Man, I'm never gonna be able to beat this guy, dude. That was my 20th try. God, let me just take a break from Sekiro. Ah, man, what's a play, man? Nothing's good right now.
You know what you could play.
How did you get in my house again?
Don't worry about that. Have you ever heard of Remnant?
No, but seriously, how'd you get in my house?
Well, you should play it because it's pretty, well. It's like Dark Souls with guns.
Go on. Yeah, it's pretty good. Remnant 2 is a sleeper hit right now, mainly because I barely see anyone talking about it. It's the sequel to the original game back in 2019, where it competed with Borderlands 3, DMC5, and Red Dead 2. So it's not really a curiosity as to why people didn't know this game. Mainly enjoyed by the PC crowd, Remnant gained a following with its Souls-like gameplay, being described as just Dark Souls with guns. And honestly, that description fits super well. Not only that, but Remnant 2 really feels like a co-op dungeon looter shooter with a mountain load of replayability. So before we get into everything Remnant 2 has to offer, I'm gonna be honest, I did not have a good first impression of this game. Like, you see that boss over there? Yeah, he was my first one, and he destroyed me a lot of times. And I really did not enjoy it. I'm sorry, I just did not have a fun time. And just so we're clear here, I have a big but fragile ego, so I thought it wasn't my fault, it was just a fucking game design flaw. Because like, why is his health so big? You see, because I chose a class that focuses on weapon speed and ranged weapons. And this boss area is, there's no range. But after dying about 30 times, I finally decided, you know what, maybe it is my fault. So I changed my armor, upgraded my weapons, and pretty much you know where this is going. After killing that boss, I had a big dopamine hit, and now I can't stop playing. So right off the bat, Remnant 2 is just big. With 5 different worlds to explore around, discovering hidden loot, fighting hidden bosses, and completing sub-objectives, it's kind of hard for me to talk about this game in a linear pace, because it's pretty much different every time you play. You're really not going to have the same experience as someone else, which is one of the biggest concerns I've seen people have with this game. Some players want to wait until their buddy catches up to them, and I mean, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and say that's incredibly nice of you. But the great thing about Remnant 2 is that it was built with replayability and difficult scaling in mind. Originally, I was thinking that me playing solo and then later joining a friend would be boring because, you know, I'd have to repeat content and I'd be super overpowered, right? Nope. That is not the case. Not even a little bit, dude. Every time I go play with my buddy in Remnant 2, I am just blown away because there's always something new every single time. It was fucking mind-blowing because we initially found this out by comparing world maps for the Red Crown item quest. And speaking of secret quests, the secrets in this game are, it's absolutely insane. Wow, that's a cool looking gun in your hands. How'd you get it? Well, you gotta go through this secret quest and then through a secret door, and then you have to go through a portal at the exact right point where you'll fall and land on an invisible bridge. Wow, that's a cool looking helmet you got. You get that from beating a boss? Yeah, but you have to get a specific dagger from a secret quest inside of a secret dungeon, and then you gotta kill that boss with the secret dagger, and if you don't kill him with the dagger, the helmet doesn't drop. Man, that's a pretty cool archetype. How'd you get it? Well, since you asked, all I had to do was equip all this, which took several hours to get, not to mention destroying a whole world in the process, which make me look like this, and then this makes a secret door that also looks like this, which leads to the literal fucking back rooms, where the items for this archetype are spread around. You have to run through the maze and pick up every single one. You know, not that hard. You see, the way secrets work in Remnant 2 is that you just have to communicate with a lot of NPCs, which give you a bunch of dialogue which is supposed to give you clues as to where you'll find the next part of the quest. And that would totally work if they just didn't speak in Lovecraftian jargon half the time.
Do not demur, for it has not the guile to see beyond.
Dog, what the fuck is this bitch saying? Thankfully, it doesn't interfere with Remnant 2's progression, as it gives you a feeling that you can kind of play this game endlessly. Because during all this, you are progressing your character class, trying new builds, and seeing what archetypes pair well. Now, the build crafting here isn't as great as Elden Ring, but they're there nonetheless, with its rings, so many goddamn rings, amulets, and relics, serving as extra buffs and bonuses to your character like extra mod damage or better healing, and yes, some of them are generally useless, but are still kind of useful. You also have trait points, which are just these blue pickups that you find around these worlds that focus into your character's traits. They make your character even stronger, giving them permanent percentages to damage, stamina, reload speed, and all that good stuff. The combat is actually pretty fucking good, with the enemy variety pretty much changing in every world. You got some worlds where a lot of enemies are going to be shooting from afar, and others where the enemies will get up close for melee combat. The combat is also supported with the weapons in the game. Mostly found through bosses or dungeons, they really feel responsive and punchy, which is great because you're constantly shooting everything in this game, including your teammates. Matter of fact, some of the best weapons drop through bosses, and oh boy, does this game got fucking bosses. You can pretty much expect any of these Soul-like games you play to have bosses, and it all depends on how interesting / difficult those bosses are to fight against that determine how fun the boss is. And Remnant 2 has some pretty cool fucking bosses. Some being easy, and some being not so easy.
I've been here for 2 hours.
I actually find myself getting really excited to stumble across another boss in my friend's world, since they would have different bosses than I would, and since those bosses are different, I would get the loot drops, and I would have all the fucking stuff in the world, like this cool fucking sword. I didn't get this in my world. All of these, in my opinion, are what make Remnant 2 a great game. Satisfying boss fights, rewarding loot, and just secret as fuck secrets.
Where the fuck I am.
If only the story was any good. Remnant 2 doesn't feel like a story game anyway, it's more of a gameplay-centric experience. Now, I'm not saying that the story was bad or anything. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of lore and plot details that I missed throughout my playthrough that helps the story, but I do think that the focus on the story here isn't that important. Without spoiling much of the game's story, I would say it's very serviceable, with the player literally being thrown into the world to find this girl named Clementine, and once you do find her, it kind of deepens the story a little bit by giving reasons to the player why they're going through all these worlds. It's really just to stop this thing called the Root, or basically just all the enemies in Yesha. I knew those fucking things were awful. Throughout the worlds, you're introduced to a lot of characters, and some of them are actually returning from the first games, and others are just not having a lot of weight in the story. What I really liked about the story was the ending. So there's the spoiler. If you don't want to see what's about to happen, just skip here. I guess water your plants in the meantime. I don't know. Basically, the ending serves as a lore-accurate reason as to why the worlds are re-rolled, since by the end, it basically determines that everything has to be deleted to stop the Root from taking over. And honestly, yeah, it is a bit cheesy, but I appreciate that it's there nonetheless. But honestly, I really don't think that the story here is that important, because in reality, like I said, Remnant 2 is just a gameplay-centric Souls-like experience that deserves all the praise that it's getting right now. What I do want to give high praise to is its worlds. One of them basically being Bloodborne 2, with a feeling of dread and misery with inconceivable eldritch horrors around every corner. And the other world being an abandoned technological world that has been infested with a disease, leaving only zombie creatures and robots left behind. And Yesha just sucks. You got trees and more trees, and yeah, I don't like it here. It really makes me wish that there's more worlds in this game right now, but to my understanding, there's going to be some DLC in the future, so hopefully another world is included with that. Basically, Remnant 2 went from a game that I've never even heard of to a game that I just can't put down, and I haven't even tried the Apocalypse difficulty yet, but for the sake of this video, I'll do it right now. Just gotta load this up. Alright, I landed here. Very good. And... oh. Yeah, never mind.